We'd like to add some trends to our report, and these would be PyPoint data references for some of our custom attributes. Let's take a look at how to do this for our pH of our mixing steps, and notice that these are directly on the event frame, so these are event frame attributes. And we're also going to do this for the current of our heater element. And notice that this is an element associated with an event frame, the HElement1 event frame. So this is actually an AF attribute. And we're going to show how to bring these in as trends into our report. Let me start by opening up the editor. I'll log in. Open my report. Since it's not already checked out, I'm going to go to File, Checkout, so I can make edits. And I'm going to choose an event frame to sample test the report. So for the current status of the report, we have the batch overview section, which corresponds to all of this. And then we have these other sections. The first entry here, which is iterated on, is what brings in these first mixing steps. This second entry section, as a reminder, is what brings in all of the heater information. And these two heater elements that are here show up because of this paragraph section that's iterated to go over the sub-batch levels. Now what we'd like to do is for each of the two mixing steps, we want a trend that includes information on the pH. And then within each of our heater element sections, we'd like a trend that has the current of our heater element, which is actually a PyPoint data reference on an AF attribute. So for each of these, it's a two-step process. We first need to bring the data into the journal, and then we need to take the data from the journal and put it into the report. So let's start by working on the pH, and let's put that into the data journal. So if I go to the data template and go on my mixing unit, I'll right-click and say Insert Journal Action. And I'm going to do this under the action parameters. I'm going to say add a new action parameter. And the data I want to bring in this case, is an event frame attribute, since the pH is directly on the event frame. And it's going to bring up a window that will let me search for that event frame attribute. I'm in my production database. And the event frame that my mixing step is based on is unit procedure underscore pH. That's a derived template that includes this pH attribute. I'm going to select the pH and put that in the attributes column, and now it shows up here. So this journal action is to bring in the pH information, and my action parameter I'm going to call pH as well. Now I'm going to work under action results. Later we're going to get work under action states, but for this video we'll work under action results. For the results definition, I want to bring in a new result based on the pH, and that result is going to be a trend. So let me pick trend, and our data source in this case is the pH, so I'm going to drag that from here over to the data source. And I'm going to call this pH trend. I'll save this. And let's check the journal to see if it automatically updated. Otherwise, we may have to hit refresh by selecting F5. So if I go to my batch journal, inside of my mixing units, I would expect to see some custom journal events, which there are none right now. So I will go ahead and refresh. And now you see that there are some journal events. Now if I go into my heater one, so that would be my third unit batch journal, because this is related to heater unit 1, there still are no journal events. Okay, so let me go back to the first one, journal events. There's one journal event corresponding to the pH. And we use terminal states in this case. If I drill all the way down, here's the pH trend, and the value is what's most important to me. That actually stores all of the values for the trend. So let me go ahead and put that in my report. To do that, I go to the Format template, and I need to find where I want to place it in my report. I want it in the iterated section for the mixing step, because after each of these start end time duration tables, I want a trend showing the pH. So first, let me add a text entry that says pH trend. And then let me add the trend itself. This is the pH trend. And we need to find the source of that data in our data journal. If I go over to journal, I can select this value item that I have here and bring it over to my source. For the width, I like to make that a little bit wider than it is by default. We'll make it 12,000. I'll click OK, go to the report, view, and refresh, and let's see if the trend comes in. If I scroll down, here's my mixing step 1 section. What's important here to notice is that the start time of this mixing step is 8:33:22. That's actually the start time of my trend. It ends at 8:35:26. Here's the end time of my trend. So the data that's pulled for the pH to make this trend is the exact same time range as was for the mixing step. And because we're iterating, it actually does the same thing for mixing step 2. So now we've done this for the pH for our mixing step, and it did both at the same time because we were using iterators. Let's do something slightly different. Now we want to take the current of an associated AF element that's associated with our event frame H element 1 and H element 2. Again, this is going to be a two-step process. First, we need to edit the data template so that we can bring the information into our data journal. Then we need to do the second step where we move the data from the data journal and show how we want to format it in the report. So first we go to the data template, and the location where this actually lives is going to be under the sub-batch under the heater element. And here we're going to add an insert journal action. This is going to be the heater current. And first we add the action parameter. This is going to be the current. And the type is slightly different this time. It's an AF attribute. Now I need to go find that AF attribute. And this is my AF structure. And this is going to be for a heater unit. And it's actually going to be one of the child elements, the heater element itself. And here's the current. In this case, we want to make sure we use the relative path and not the absolute path so that when we switch between heater element 1 and heater element 2 for our two event frames, it actually changes which tag it's bringing the information in from. And here's our AF attribute and the current. Now we actually need to say what type of data we want to bring in for that AF attribute. That's under Action Results. I'm going to hit the plus sign and say New Type, and we're going to bring in a trend again. I drag the action parameter over to the data source. I'm going to call this the current trend. And I'll click OK. And I can save my report. I'm going to go ahead and view refresh, and let's see where that shows up in our journal. So I need to find one of my unit batches that's for the heater. That's my third one, because here's heater unit. And then I need to go into the sub batches. And if I go into the sub batch, that corresponds to heater element 1. And again, if I go into the second sub batch, that corresponds to heater element 2. So I can look in either one. But now you notice there are some journal events here in the sub batch. If I open that up, this journal event corresponds to the heater current. And if I look under terminal states, journal entries, you can see that the result goes down to the trend of the current. So this value here is actually what I need. This stores all of the information related to the trend. We want to make that go into our reports. We go to the format template, and I want that to live or to be reported from the paragraph, the iterated paragraph within one of the heater units. So I'm going to say insert text, and I'm going to say trend of heater current. And let's also go ahead and insert the trend. And this is going to be the heater current. And the source of that data is this value right here. And the width, again, I'm going to make 12,000. And let me refresh my report on the right. Again, these are the two trends for the pH. And now if we look under our heater element, this paragraph section that's iterated on to get through heater element 1 and heater element 2 now includes a trend. So here's heater element 1. The time range of this trend corresponds to the start and end time of this heater element sub-batch. And then since we're iterating, it goes through and looks for all the different heater element child event frames. And here's the start time and end time that correspond to heater element 2. So we've now showed how to add journal actions to our data template to bring in trend information for both event frame attributes and AF attributes, and how to bring those journal actions into our reports.